Hello, hello, hello. How many of you watched the Oscars yesterday? Well, today the winner is Gary Parker. But yeah, I know it was wonderful, wasn't it? For people who, for diversity in general, the Oscars was amazing. Today, this is Tea with Lily, and welcome. My name is Lily Naja. I'm a brand strategist by day, and at night, I turn into a conversationalist where I invite people to come and have a chat with me over a cup of tea, and we call the program Tea with Lily. It's a series of informal discussions where we chat about topical issues over a cup of tea. And today's guest is going to talk to us about money, how we get money into our hands as businesses as well as community organizations. Gary has been around, and this is actually his actual second Tea with Lily. The last time he actually went to his office when we did this for the radio version of Tea with Lily. But today we have Gary here on LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live. And he's going to tell us how we can get our hands on some money. Welcome, Gary. How are you?
I'm very well. I can also tell you how to lose some as well, because I've been quite good at that in the past as well.
No, I don't want to know about that. I really don't want to know about that. Hi, Miss Pat. Hi, Miss Roslyn. Thanks for joining. Where are you joining from? Because I know, as usual, this is worldwide. So we want to know who our friends are who are joining us, whether they're joining from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from London, from Italy, from France, wherever. Gary's in Greenwich, right?
I'm actually. I'm in our offices. I live in Greenwich, but we're just about in Bexley. I'm in Erith at the moment at the Engine House, which is a big business centre. And as you can probably see from the background, I'm in my office because we've gone back very recently.
Oh, great. I think somebody says they want to know about money. Everybody wants to know about money. We live in such precarious times. So we've got Smruti is calling from, I hope I've mentioned her name properly. She's calling, she's in the UK. That's the only person that's told us where they're from, but a few people have joined. There's London and so on and so forth. So Gary, what are you drinking today? And welcome to the Magic Sofa.
Well, I'm on the hard stuff. This is Ribena that I'm drinking because we have got a bottle of wine actually that somebody gave me at Christmas that's in the office, but not having been here much, and I didn't think I'd hit the bottle because it would, there's only me here, it would be me drinking by myself, which is pretty sad if you do that. I think alcohol, that is. I'm not teetotal, but I'm not a big drinker, and I'm definitely a social drinker. I don't drink much by myself at home or whatever. That's not really for me. I'd rather do other things.
Oh, great. That's good. The echo is back again, but there's nothing we can do about it. So, Gary, this is your second Tea with Lily, and I just want to share your background a bit with our listeners and our watchers, our guests who are watching with us. Gary is a management consultant with decades of experience in the private, community, and public sectors, and he does training, fundraising, income generation, community generation even. And he has founded and managed many businesses such as nutrition, well-being, fashion retail, transport, education. He's currently working on a digital technology project and recently set up a rapidly expanding creative industries project. Gary, this is very, very exciting. Digital project. I'm sure you'll tell us all about that.
Absolutely. The one I'm most interested in at the moment, because I'll explain my background about fundraising shortly, is in creative industries. Because My background's in creative industries. I was a very bad actor, so we mentioned the Oscars, and a musician. I was much better at that. In fact, that kind of I was very actively involved in various musical projects for a whole number of years before I started earning a proper living, as it were, because I had a very good time. But it's a bit like sport. There's 1% at the top that make a lot of money, and everybody else kind of struggles and gets along. And I'm in that group. But I've kind of come back to it. The other issue with that is I didn't really know a lot about the business side of it. So I wish I knew then what I know now, as people always say. But yeah, I'm working with a creative project that encompasses music, film, art, and various a recording studio and various other elements to it, which are developing as we speak. And I'm working with a number of other people. Mainly from quite diverse backgrounds, actually, from all over the world. And it's very, very interesting the way things develop. And we're sharing lots of skills and experience, and it is very interesting.
Oh, that's exciting. I have to sort of come to your office again when things open up, and you can show me everything that you're doing. But let me just finish your background. So, Gary, you're manager of managing director of C&T Associates, and you develop funding applications for private sector companies, social enterprise, health trusts, colleges, universities, what have you. And you've been a visiting lecturer.
Yeah, that was in health and regeneration, which was interesting in itself. Although I did a lot of work around finding funding for health projects, which is kind of coming useful recently.
Yes, I can imagine. So welcome again. And a couple of people have said there's a lady, Zia is watching from Bexley Heath, so just round the corner from you. And Roslyn is asking what the digital business is. Will you tell us some about it later on in the program, or is it all very secret?
No, I can talk about. I'll talk about the principle of digital businesses and how you might fund them, rather than specifically mine, because we could probably spend about half an hour talking about what I've got involved in. So I'll mention some of it. Which is basically around online communities and developing them. So because the software around, like Lily, this group of people in from all over the world, if you got everybody to sign up to it, they could communicate with each other. You could put posts in, you could put blogs in, whatever, videos in it. So that's the kind of digital business. I'm working with somebody who's got a lot of experience in this area, but we're at a very early stage at the moment. So I might come back to that later.
Okay, great. So welcome again, and C&T Associates. I've never actually asked you what C&T
does this stand for? Yeah, well, the original company was called Community Network Training, Community Network Training, CNT. But because that's what we did originally. It was formed in 2003, and for a number of years we ran a very successful training organization that the turnover between 2003 and 2008, our turnover shot up massively. We were turning over millions, literally. And then we had a group of companies. But when recession hit, it's like now, there was cutbacks and contracts were changed, and business was hit. And then we got into a kind of, from being on paper like millionaires overnight to a very different situation. So we had to restructure the company. And one of the offshoot companies was called CNT Associates, which is a consultancy part of it. And we basically used that to trial a number of new services, like our fundraising, business support, training, all the things that we do now. And that started that kind of stabilized. What happened in the end is the original company, we restructured it and eventually put that into liquidation. And then so 2 other companies emerged from it. And it was a strategy that worked, because 10 years later we're still here. So, but it was a very stressful time, because when the pandemic started last year, I thought, because I'm asthmatic, although not as bad as I was when I was younger, I thought, great, you've got a situation where you've got a respiratory illness that could really damage you, because I know what that's like, because I was very seriously ill when I was very young from respiratory illness, and it took me about 2 years to recover from it. And also, obviously, we didn't know the way businesses have gone, but as things go, you've got to do your best. You've got to hope for the best. And I haven't picked up COVID yet, and our business has actually increased. Yes, no, I've had 1 vaccination now, so that could help me, because of being asthmatic in part. And also, our business has actually expanded through the over the last year, because we were already putting a lot of our services online anyway, and we ended up getting a much bigger audience, and more business, and obviously helping people to access funding of various types is a service that is in demand, because there are some services that have struggled, but there are others that haven't, so we've been lucky in that ours hasn't. But having been through, to be honest, I thought, well, out of the 2, I'd rather avoid having COVID and my business go bust, because at least you're still alive, or you're not seriously ill. So I'm quite sort of phlegmatic like that. It's not fazed me too much, but I'm kind of like, while there's life, there's hope, basically. No matter how tough your situation is, if there's no life, there's no hope, is there?
Yeah. So there's no life, there's no business, right?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. No business on a dead planet, etc. As some people are saying at the moment. So the last year has been interesting, and as I say, the experience from 10 years ago has been very, very useful, because if you've got because we may be, we've had the furlough and everything, and some businesses may disappear. One of the advantages we did have 10 years and now is that we didn't have a lot of debt. If you rack up debt in a business, that is, some people have recently, but debt has to be repaid, or you end up your business going into liquidation and you owe people money, whether it's the government or whoever. So one of our companies suffered a little bit during the past year. We could have got a bounce back loan, but I thought, well, what we're going to do with this money? If you get a loan, you've got to have a plan, really. I mean, obviously, some businesses needed funding to stabilize themselves, and that's fine. But if you don't need the money, and we've been lucky that we don't, then we've just carried on as usual. And we've been in a much more fortunate positions than some that I've dealt with, often through no fault of their own as well. It's quite it's quite disheartening to see that happening to some people, but I've tried to help a lot of people, and we've run a lot of online presentations for people. In fact, we're running some more. If people, hopefully you're going to put my contact details on this, but on our website, which is cntassociates.com. If you go onto that, there's a button on courses and events. You will see what we're running at the moment. We're running one on Thursday on funding for sports projects, but we run funding for health projects, digital projects, funding for businesses, funding for creative organizations, funding for well-being. We ran a presentation on funding for well-being projects last week. So
when you say well-being, for instance, or funding for sports, what sort of companies, organizations, or group, or like a football club, or You do.
All types. What these are, the generic presentations. So like for digital funding, there's a whole range of fundings. That's one of the other ones that we do. So it'll be, for example, we've got some slides on funding for women-led digital projects, others for community projects, others for private companies. We try and encompass all sectors. It is quite a challenge, that, because we don't just focus on one type of organization. It's generic and it's across the board. So
what would a woman-led digital organization look like, for instance? I'm asking for a friend, obviously.
Yeah, well, there's no kind of one model. It can be around any projects. I can tell you what the funders focus on, because that's quite interesting. There's an organization that actually makes investments as well. There's two, because I can mention these off the top of my head without being prompted with notes. There's one called Girl Geeks, which Girl Geeks, yes,
nice girls.
yes, Girl Geeks, which is an organization which is women-led and supports women-led tech projects. And the areas they focus on are financial technology, well-being, education technology, creative industries, and financial technology, if I haven't mentioned that already, fintech. So those are the areas that it covers. There's probably one or two others, and they will consider other areas. And then there's another one called, which is another investment organization called Angel Academe, and they tend to work on a more one-to-one basis. They've got a, I'll have to be careful how I pronounce this. It's called 500 Female Flawless Founders. I'm really glad I got that right.
So they're supporting 500 female flawless
founders. Yeah.
Founders. Okay.
Yeah. For women-led businesses.
I'm flawless. I'm female. I'm a founder. And
yeah,
I'm one of the 500. So Gary, I'm coming to you so you can tell me where to get that money.
Yeah. Obviously, you've got to. What people have to realize is you have to jump through hoops to get funding. The most difficult group of people to get funding for are, without a doubt, sole traders, because if you've got a company, even if you're a sole director company, that's more of an advantage than if you are a sole trader. Why is that? Because governments and larger organizations in particular prefer not to deal with individuals. They'd rather deal with companies. There's a number of reasons for that. Number one is around liability, because it is probably much more difficult to get chase people for debts as individuals, although that certainly does happen. And also you can contractually, they much prefer to deal with an organization that's got some infrastructure, because often you require, policies like health and safety, GDPR, and all the rest. So it's better if you've got that organizationally rather than an individual. But that's not across the board. There are some programs. For example, if you want to take on an apprentice, that's a good example of a government program. You can do that as a sole trader. People don't always realize that. But having said that, they've got this new program called Kickstart, which is a work experience program for younger people. You've got to be a company to take people on through that. It's not for sole traders. So there's lots of nuanced funding issues around all of these. But basically, if you want to max out, probably if you're in business, you should probably look at setting up a non-profit making business. And the first, because you can get grant funding and you can trade as well, so you can sell services. And people say to me,
"Well, that's a CIC, isn't it?"
Yeah, or a company limited by guarantee. That's the
easiest
one. You could set that up via Companies House. or we give advice on that. And people often say to me, well, if you set up one of these, if it's non-profit making, how can I get paid? Well, they employ people. Some very big businesses are non-profit making, including some that have been in the headlines in the past week or so. For example, Barcelona FC, that was going to join the Super League, is actually a non-profit making business, but that doesn't stop it making profits. I'm mentioning that because that's one of the biggest.
They put the profit back into the
business, yeah. But can you pay yourself? Yes. Can you employ the people? Yes. Can you hire premises, take on leases? Yes. There are some other differences, but that's the easiest way to maximize grant funding. But there are other funding opportunities out there for private companies and indeed individuals. For example, the digital world, there's an organization called Innovate UK. If you want to Google that, they fund a lot of tech projects, and for a lot of their funding programs, not all of them, you can apply as an individual.
Innovate UK.
Innovate UK, yeah. And it's part of an organization called UKRI, and they've got a website. Again, if people come to one of our presentations, then we give this information. We give some presentations away for free, and others we sell them. The free ones are probably about 15 slides. The pay ones are very comprehensive. They're about 35 slides, but they don't cost the earth. They cost £12. So that is a bargain, if ever there was one, because the amount of knowledge in there, if you see it, you'll be very pleased, I can tell you, because we've been doing this research for a long time.
And Gary, is this done online, all these courses? Are they?
Yes,
them all online? Okay.
Yeah, they're all online. In fact, we're developing some at the moment, which are recordings that people are going to be able to access, because I mentioned earlier about the digital project I'm working on, which is creating digital communities. At some stage in the future, we will have a CNT digital community, and then we're going to put all this stuff on there, and you can watch it at 3 o'clock in the morning if you really need to. If you want to, it'll be good listening to my voice to send you to sleep, and some of my colleagues as well.
I can come and do the voiceover for you, Gary. I can
Yes,
do some voiceover work.
Yes.
If you're looking, I'm touting myself here, but I have somebody who's calling from Ghana and has said, how can we benefit from this project from Ghana?
Which project are they talking about?
I don't know. Patience, can you put in there which project you're talking about so Gary can answer that question directly? But do you do anything outside of UK? That might answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, you can get access to our webinar from outside the UK. You just, as I say, if you if you look at our website, cntassociates.com, there's a button which says courses and events. What we're running at the moment is all on there, and there's a lot of free stuff. We are doing some paywall stuff. For example, we're doing one on Shopify soon, which is how to set up an online store and store, which Shopify is the biggest platform in the world, 800,000. You can set up a Shopify store anywhere in the world, because it's digital.
So that could be useful for somebody who can, to set up a shop. So what I'll do, guys, after this, Gary and I, or one of us, will organize for the links to his website and everything to be posted on both or all three platforms that we're watching on, so you can go and pick what you need from there. But it's cntassociates.com.
Yeah, COM. Yeah.
So it's Charlie November Tango Associates.com.
Yeah. That's all one word. Yeah. So that's easy.
We can all set up our Shopify shops and sell everything. What can you sell on Shopify?
It works particularly well if you've got goods and services that are very visual, but a lot of people are using it as branding now. For example, somebody that a lot of people will know and will know internationally That's Stormzy. Stormzy's got his own online shop, and you can even buy Stormzy wallpaper off that. Obviously, you can buy prints, you can buy all his music, but Stormzy wallpaper, yes. You don't believe me? Look on his website. He's got an online store,
and it's a Shopify website.
Yeah, it's a Shopify site. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to check that out. And I think I'll come to one of your classes as well. Just to, you can never learn too much, so I'll come to one of your classes as well.
Yeah, we've got a free one on Shopify on the 5th of May, which is an introduction to it, and then
5th of May, what time?
That is 11 till 12, 11 a.m. till midday, and then on the 18th of May is the paywall one. Because why that is because we actually do it live on the Shopify website. Because what you can do is you get a 2-week free trial, and we go onto it live. Or shout out to my colleague Sybil Mayard and from Sybil Tech, who does the techie bits, and she will take you through some of the main features on the website. So what you can do, if you do that, you get a short PowerPoint on the free one. Then on the main one, you get obviously a fuller PowerPoint. You get live instruction, and you also get a video as well, which explains the background to it. So it's very cost effective.
Sounds quite good. You've layered the value in the service chain. So there's free, and then there's a little bit. But then if you're running a business, all of those things are investments rather than a fee. We have to see it as investing in your business so you can generate more income.
I mean, one of the things we wanted to do during the last year, and why we were going online anyway, because we speeded up when we could see what was happening, is that you need people to know you're still out there. The first ones I ran, because I hadn't used Zoom that much I'd used it occasionally up till April last year, and then like the first one we ran, we had 70-80 people online. From our live events, you would never get, we ran live training on this, which we might go back to some of that soon if things continue to improve, but we would never get 70 or 80 people live at a training session. But we did get, numbers. But it's interesting recently, the numbers seem to be dropping on online presentations, because I'm involved in some other ones. Like I do some for Federation of Small Businesses, and while the numbers are still good on the FSB, they're not like they were, a sort of year ago, or even 6 months ago. But I think there's reasons for that. Number one, people are going back to work, maybe they're just sick of going on Zoom and looking at me. I don't know, but there's a few reasons for people doing that. So in future, we'll probably use a blend of all of them, because I do like doing live training. And as we've all seen over the past year, seeing each other online is fine, but it's much better to interact with other humans when you can. It's
and
much
I think sometimes the issue is, you'll have technology problems. You can't. I always say to people, and people are always shouting at me for wanting this visual thing, but I tend to listen with my eyes, and sometimes not having that human contact, and human contact, or something that we call the word, it leaves me, but I'll come back to that. Oh, hi Sam. Samantha.
Hello, Samantha.
Yeah, I mean, we all know Samantha. She's the CEO of Echo. Echo looks after kids and does so much for them. So thank you for joining us, Sam. Now, Gary, why aren't many people aware of funding sources in this country?
Well,
what is the thing that's stopping people from knowing where or how?
Because there's no one place where you can go to get all the information that you need, because if you think about it, there's lots of different types of funders. You know, we've mentioned tonight some international funders, and there's local funders. There's, you know, we're based in London, so you've got regional funders like the London Business Hub, which is a site set up by the Mayor of London, Mayor of London's office, which I would really recommend to people. The London Business Hub, just Google that. The London Business Hub, HUB. And that's got a lot of really good information on it about funding and other support as well. And then there's some crowdfunding platforms that you can get through onto that, which is another interesting area. But there's no one portal or platform you can go to, because the funding sources are so diverse. So that's where we come in, organizations like us, because we research these. We've been doing it for over 10 years. So we know where to look. And on my presentations, what I always do, one of the first slides is, here are my top 5 web links, you know, to, if you're looking for funding, start here, because if you don't, you're gonna go round and around and around. And of course, the other thing is, it depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for well-being funding, you'll probably have to go to one place. If you're looking for digital funding, we've already mentioned that, you've got to go to places like Innovate UK and UKRI. Well, if you're running a business or an organization, you probably haven't got time to do that, you know, because I became a fundraiser. I'll tell you how I became a fundraiser. Years ago, I used to work for a training organization, and the principal fundraiser bid writer left. And the head of the organization said to me, you've got a new job, Gary. And I said, well, what's that? I said, I didn't think I'd lost my old job. And they said, oh, we think you're so good, you've got 2 jobs now, your trainer job, and now you're a fundraiser as well. So I kind of learnt from scratch, which was really hard, because I didn't, you know, I had some bids and I talked to the previous person who left. But we've put together a number of guides to fundraising as well, that are out there.
I have a question. Can you see them?
Yes. What are the crowdfunding sites? Oh, that's an interesting one. There's one that you might want to check out called Pay It.
Okay, crowdfunding.
Yeah. Why I'm mentioning that particular one is
I quite like that name. But it's Pay It Forward London.
Pay It Forward. PAYIT forward, Pay It Forward London. Because what that does, if it's still there, because you've got to check this, it was again created by the Mayor of London's office, and if you crowdfund up to £5,000, they will match it. So if you crowdfund £5,000, they will give you another £5,000. And if you raise £3,000, they'll match fund it with another 3, so you'll have 6.
Is it free?
Yes.
So you crowdfund £5,000.
Yeah.
The Mayor of London, regardless of what it is, the Mayor of London will match it and you don't have to pay it back.
They've created a fund. It was originally, a year ago, it was 1.5 million, but at least £500,000 has gone out now. But you know, crowdfunding is a technique. Most crowdfunding sites, probably the 2 biggest I can name are crowdfunder.co.uk, and that does what it is, which is a very interesting one. And another one is called Crowdcube, which is more private sector focused. The other, crowdfunder.co.uk. Crowdcube, yeah, that's owned by Richard Branson's Virgin Group, and that's a bit kind of like Dragon's Den type investment. You know, people investing in this. Crowdfunder.co.uk is where people actually make what are essentially donations if they like your project and support it.
For business.
Yeah, Crowdcube's more for business. But if you look on crowdfunder.co.uk, you can raise money via donations for businesses as well. They cover quite a wide range of areas. What most crowdfunding platforms will do is you don't have to pay up front, but they will, and some are free because the pay it forward is free, I think. But they charge between 4 and 9% of what you raise.
Okay. There's another question, interesting one that has come through. What about funding for a UK charity doing work in Africa? What are the limitations?
Well, the main limitations are, what are the parameters of the funder? Because some funders, often they're set up, very long. Because we've got charities in the UK, some that are up to 1,000 years old. They've been around for 1,000 years, and then they're often set up by a kind of trust deed, and they can only work in the UK usually. But then more modern ones can work internationally. But you've got to find one that focuses on what your charity wants to fund. So it does depend on what it does. But there are many charitable trust funders out there that will fund work in the UK and indeed internationally as well. And then you've got other organisations that may be able to help, like the British Council, which promotes British culture and institutions worldwide. And they have some grant funding programs. They do change a lot.
Oh, that's amazing. You are an encyclopedia on funding.
Oh yes, I can bore. I can bore for England and I can bore for Africa as well. Believe you me, on all of this stuff.
Question here. How does the grant incentive work? What's the criteria for SME?
Well, a grant is not repayable. That's the difference. People don't always realize this. A loan is repayable. A grant is not repayable. The criteria for SMEs is whether, you see, a lot of charitable trusts won't fund any profit-making business or an individual. That's a blanket rule. For example, the lottery. The lottery is a good example. They won't fund any profit-making business, so any business limited by shares or any private individual. What they will fund is obviously charities, but some non-profit making companies as well, some types of non-profit making companies. They will fund community projects, a range of others. And then there are some, I'll tell you this, Britain's biggest charitable trust funder is the Wellcome Foundation. The Wellcome Foundation, WELLCOME, the Wellcome Foundation is Wellcome Foundation is a big drug company, and they have 14 or 15 funding programs. Obviously, they're around health and health research, but they will fund any type of organization, or in fact, some of their programs will fund individuals. They'll fund profit-making companies, non-profit-making companies, and charities. It depends on your project with them. But they distribute over £700 million a year.
That one's so money. There's another question that's comes with, gosh, you've come prepared. What about a UK charity for scientific or mental health?
Well, I've just mentioned one that the Wellcome Foundation could potentially fund research, but there are many others that will do that, large and small. Let me just think of some off the top of my head. There is one that I like called the Paul Hamlin Foundation that funds some work around mental health. I think probably the lady that's just come online, if you want to contact me, if you want to email me, I can answer that question, because there's a few organizations and it depends what aspect of mental health or well-being you're working on, because it could be physical well-being, it could be mental well-being, it could be a mixture of both. There are some organizations that will fund, I mean, the lottery is another organization that will fund a lot of well-being and mental health projects, but it does depend on how you're set up. The Wellcome Foundation will fund private companies. The lottery won't, basically. But there are others that will fund all types of organizations. You just got to research them and know where to look.
Oh gosh.
And I do. Yeah, but it's like anything else.
For everybody that wants to have further information, please, Gary, is it okay to put your email down?
Yes, please. Yeah.
In the chat,
yeah.
People can email you for further information and also to be able to attend. I'm definitely going to the 5th of May class to go and find out some more. So in terms of fundraising, no, I had one more question. What does the future look like post-COVID in terms of funding? Are we going to see more or less? Because the UK government certainly says it's sort of running out of money. They're not giving, like the nurses were not giving their pay rises as promised. So is the money going to dry out, or are they going to, not dry out, but are they going to hold tight and not give out any more money? How do you see that?
That's a very good question. In terms of government funding, yeah, I think it's going to be tight, but they will fund some things. Like they're very keen on funding digital projects, because obviously that is the future, and you can sell them and market them, both digital products and services, internationally to bring in money. So that is still there. As I say, Innovate UK, they gave them, on top of considerable funding already, another 175 million pounds towards the end of last year. So that money's still there, but you do have to jump through hoops to get that, and the success rate for applications is not high. Let's put it that way.
But somebody so if one person can get through, another person can get through.
Yeah. But registered charities like Wellcome, think about them. Their money's still going to be there, isn't it? They're a drug company. They're involved in, they advise the government on the pandemic. They're probably working with other companies around vaccines and stuff like that, and health research. They're not, that 700 million a year will still be there. And most charitable trusts, the ones in the UK that have been around for 1,000 years, they've got, that generates a lot of interest in the bank. If you've had funding for several hundred years, so all of that money is still there, because charitable trusts in the UK, because I'm always looking at the figures on this, and it's between 4 and 5 billion pounds a year just in grant funding, and that doesn't include the lottery. It doesn't include a lot of what's called social investment funds, because some of them are grants and some of them are loans and some of them are hybrid. So because this is what came out 10 years ago. People said to me, oh, well, is there going to be any money there? Government money will probably be in shorter supply. But a lot of these other organisations, no, they're not impacted by this. And so that is all still there.
Fantastic, Gary. So grateful. Just 3 top line tips that you can leave us with, so that we don't go about thinking that we're getting loans instead of free money and free money instead of loans. What are your top 3 tips?
Number one is definitely do your research. That's why it's good. I mean, we've offered a lot of free services, but there are other organizations you can go to, or Google it, or go on YouTube. There's a lot of people on YouTube. Do your research first and try and match up. My advice is to develop a long-term strategy for your business or project, whatever it is, and then look for the funding to support that. Because if you haven't got a strategy, because people like me are technical specialists, right? The one thing that will make an organization develop and continue is the leadership. And as long as you develop that, then and develop a strategy for your project or business, then you look for the funding to support it. So that's tip number 2. somebody just put up a message which I agree with, saying they need help from the government and others. There is always funding, even in local authorities. Well, a lot of local authorities have lost a lot of money because they've had to pay for the pandemic and a lot of additional services. So there is grant funding in still, if you can apply for it in many local authorities, and there's other services to help people write bids, but you've got to look further afield. Don't look to central and local government to bail you out, because that's going to be very difficult. Look to some of these other funding organisations I've mentioned, like Innovate UK, UKRI, all these charitable trusts, the lottery, and others. The other thing, my final tip on this is look at your business model as well, because there are some areas, like health is one of them, creative industries, some digital, some well-being, where you can develop a non-profit making model. Then you can still sell the services there, but you can also get grant funding. So that's, the numbers are actually increasing of what's called social enterprises, because we've got some expertise in house on that. And so look at your business model, because you've got to be, one thing I've learned in over 15 years in business is you have to constantly develop your business model, and you have to constantly reinvent yourself and your business's services. Yeah. I mean, I call it the Madonna strategy. She's been around for about 20 years and keeps reinventing herself, modernizing the music she provides, etc., doing other things, and that's the way you kind of will develop your services on a long-term basis. We've had some quite interesting people speak at some of our webinars as well, and and they've given some very, very good tips. Like one guy who's started off with nothing and is now running a group of 5 very big businesses, actually gave out a mathematical formula to how he developed his businesses, which was very, very interesting. But one of the things he did say, and this is a lesson to all of us, is he set up these other companies to cross-sell to existing customers, because originally he was selling photocopiers and things like that, document management. People like those. So then they started selling phones, and often the same, which is true, because if you look behind me, the guy that did that, we've had photocopiers off them for 15 years. And a couple of years ago, we started buying phones off them. So cross-selling is a strategy that works if you've got a big enough customer base. So I could give more tips, but I think we'll leave it with those tonight.
Yeah, we'll Patience will definitely get Gary's email to you at some stage. Now, the final. So, Gary, what's your email in case somebody wants it right now? What's your email address?
The best one to send an email to is info, INFO, info at CNT, Charlie Knows Tango, CNT Associates, that's all one word, .com.
Okay, I've written it down. I'm sort of typing as we're going along. And your website is cntassociates.com.
Yes, that's the best one, because all our contact details are on there. But if you email that email address, that will get to us.
Great. Also, one final thing: as they say, you come and visit somebody, and you always leave a present, I guess. So, what present are you going to leave with us before you go?
What we're going to do,
I call it a giveaway, but it's a thing that we say when you go and visit someone. You take a bottle of wine or something. Since we can't do wine and stuff like that, what present are you leaving for us?
What I'm going to do is, we mentioned Shopify Live earlier, so I am going to give the first 4 people who respond a copy of the full presentation on this, and a set of 9 videos which explain how to do it. So they're worth probably about £50 between them.
Oh, great. All right. So what we do is this is social media. So I will. So if you're interested, just say interested, and we will come back to you. The first four that say interested, then we'll come back to you and let you know how
Yes.
you can get hold of the Shopify
Yeah.
class. So
Or
that's very generous. That's very
oh,
generous.
the other thing I will do as well for another 4 people.
Oh, so it's 8. Ooh, interested. Carol Pike, interested.
If you can
Anybody else?
see that there, that is our fundraising training pack, which
Okay.
is it's 19 pages on how to write a bid and funding sources.
Oh my
So
word.
we'll send another 4 people the download of that. I mean, normally we're selling that for £12, but 4 people can have a download of that.
Okay, that's great. I'm sure the interested parties will come through, and Gary, I'll forward the information to you. Right, that's amazing. We're nearly to the top of the hour. Miriam, Carol, Patience, and I'm sure the rest will come through. Now, thank you so much, Gary, for sharing your expertise. I know that you know everything about funding since the time I met you, and I think the last time we did this, you were telling me was 2014, and you've
Yes, yeah,
updated the knowledge. So that's nearly 7 years ago. Wow.
that's right. But as I say, some of these are still the same, others are new, but it is an area. There's not one person who's the expert on this. You've got to go to diverse sources. You know how much information there is out there. What we do is we just, we find a pathway for people, and but it is kind of it's like developing a business. There's no blueprint for this. Sometimes we succeed and sometimes we don't, but we have raised over £30 million for the organizations we've worked for. I wish I had the 30 million, or we'd be doing this in the Bahamas, wouldn't we, Lily?
I
Or similar.
know. Yeah.
Yes, but
That's
we have raised a lot of money for organizations we've worked with that's in over a decade.
Yeah, yeah. That much I know. So thank you so much for sharing everything that you know about this. And the last time we spoke, you said, "Oh, I'll come back and let you know." And it took 7 years to do this
Yeah,
again. Please don't wait 7 years before we do, because I'm sure in 2 years' time, or even 18 months' time, something else might change. So please do come back and share your knowledge with us. But
I
until
will
next
do.
time, everybody else who's joined us, everybody who's catching on catch up to, thank you for tuning in. We're very, very grateful, and do remember that loans are to be paid back, and grants are normally free based on a certain criteria.
Yeah. Can I mention one thing, Lily? Because I should have remembered this, because we're on LinkedIn. I am
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. So the easiest way to link in with me is find me, Gary Parker. You know what I look like now. And there's a picture of me on my profile, and I'm linked in with Lily as well. So
Yes,
you can message me via LinkedIn.
indeed. Okay, actually, this program has Gary tagged in the LinkedIn video, so you find him tagged to this LinkedIn video, and then you can contact him, and he can give you all the information. So thank you very much, everybody. Gary, thanks again, and do stay. I want to have a quick chat with you before you go. I don't want to stand between you and your dinner. But thanks everyone for joining. Look after yourself, look after your pennies, and whatever you do, make sure that business and everything that we're doing is helping each other and helping the communities that we live in. People are suffering, and so it's good to just ask everyone every now and again, how are you doing? And may everything that you wish for be the least that you receive. My name is Lily Naja Mensah, brand strategist by day and a conversationalist by night. Take care now. Bye bye, everyone.